When the world unravels and your family and friends have come to your house and you fed them dinner, how are you going to deal with all the sanitation issues? This is part 3 of a 4-part series on who's coming to dinner, and this one focuses on sanitation, one of the most overlooked critical aspects of our preparedness efforts. Hey, Provident Preppers, I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Kylene, and this is part 3 on our Who's Coming to Dinner with Dr. Kyle Christensen. Our first one was on actually who's coming for dinner. The second one was on how do you feed that many people and some of the rules that you need to develop. But today is number 3, and it is all about sanitation. How do you take care of keeping people clean and disposing of human waste? And what kind of things do you need to think about when you have a whole lot of people come to your place to stay? So, Dr. Christensen, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Again, I'm Dr. Kyle Christensen, practicing chiropractor. I've been doing this for over 40 years now. And again, the goal with sanitation is how do we keep people healthy? When we had the devastating earthquake in Haiti, several years ago, sadly, more people died as a result of sanitation issues than the earthquake itself. And so sanitation is so important that you can't just gloss over it. You absolutely need to be prepared with methods and means that will literally save lives.
I personally think sanitation is the most overlooked thing that we talk about food, we talk about water and some of these other things, but sanitation will hurt us or kill us faster than the lack of some of these other things. So I think this is truly an important topic that we have to think about in advance. We can't just wait till something happens because we may not have a sewer system. We may not have a water system.
Even if you do have working sanitation, working sewer and all that, but you have guests over who use way too much toilet paper and clog up the toilet, and then it's running all over, and then you're out of toilet paper. You're like, wait, how do you teach them how to use the correct amount of toilet paper? I mean,
go even beyond that. Toilet paper will run out. That's a reality. And so one of the things that they do over in Europe that we don't do so much here is using a bidet. And there are, bidet bottles that you can buy that will basically, and what you're doing when you're using a bidet bottle, you're using water. You're basically squirting it there and cleaning yourself that way. And then it's a matter of 1 or 2 squares of toilet paper or a flannel square that we've made just to pat things dry. But again, converting people into a different way of doing something can be a challenge. If you're on a septic system, and all of a sudden you've got 20 people that are using the toilet, you could overwhelm that system fairly quickly. And so most people with septic, we know that we're going to be using it for 4 or 6 or whatever number of people, and it's designed to accommodate that. The thing that I've discovered as I've investigated ad nauseum all of this sanitation stuff is what's the best way? Is an outhouse going to be something that you should consider? And as I've wrestled with this issue, I discovered the work of a man named Joe Jenkins. He wrote a book called Humanure, if you've heard of that.
Yes.
Also, the compost toilet. And so in our home, we have compost toilets, meaning that it's basically a receptacle. It's a toilet that will capture your human waste, and between uses, you layer it with organic material, sawdust or peat moss or anything organic, not ash or lye or dirt, and then when the bucket is 3/4 full, you take it out to the compost bin. And so we actively will compost this. And and we've had actually large gatherings at our home, and we've filled up buckets and buckets using the compost toilet and composted it, and it composts, wonderfully. And so, but again, you've got to have a compost bin. And so what we've done, and many people have done, is we make compost bins out of old pallets, and we simply screw or wire together four pallets and build a compost bin. And as the compost rises, at some point the bin is going to be full, and then we put it to sleep for a year. And so our goal is not to be turning that compost to make it soil for our garden within 3 or 4 months. Our goal is basically we start the next compost bin. And so in our situation, we've got 4 compost bins side by side that we work on, and one finishes its season. We put it to bed. We put the cattle panel or the hog wire over the top so pests can't get into it, and we have compost that'll be ready in about a year without having to turn it. And so I highly recommend Joe Jenkins books. You can go online and find some great videos and things, and it makes sense to have clean sanitary conditions.
So how are you feeling about your visitors free ranging and depositing their urine everywhere in your yard?
Here's the thing with urine. Urine can be used as a fertilizer. However, it needs to be diluted. And the ratio is basically, 1 cup of urine to a gallon of water. And so it's roughly a 1:16 ratio. And so if you've ever had a dog and the dog goes out to the lawn and it pees on the lawn in the same spot, pretty soon you've got this burnt, piece of grass. And so people, peeing wherever is not necessarily advised. And so now tell that to the 10 and 12-year-old boys, they don't want to come in to go to the bathroom and play. When you're doing a compost toilet, however, the feces and the urine both go in the toilet. If you're using a composting toilet, which is different, you're making the compost within the toilet. Nature's Head makes one that's popular. You're separating the urine from the feces, and then you've got this receptacle, a gallon receptacle of urine that you need to just dispose of. I'm a big fan of the compost toilets. Here's the other question. How many compost toilets do you need? And so one compost toilet, they estimate, will service about 10 people. And so if you've got 20 people, you need 2. If you got 30, you should have 3, and so forth. And then you're going to need someone responsible that, it's going to be their job to empty the toilets in the compost bins and so forth. And so again, not a prized sought after job, but a necessary one. How long are those disposable diapers going to last? Do you have cloth diapers? I remember years ago, my wife, was telling me, she says, I just feel that we need to get some cloth diapers. And I thought, we don't have kids in diapers. We don't need cloth diapers. She says, I know. And finally, after 3 weeks, it was like, oh, yeah, go buy cloth diapers. And so again, cloth diapers that can be, washed and reused again and again. If you've got kids, if you've got grandkids, if you've got no kids, it's probably a good idea to have some. Now you can make cloth diapers, and there's a lot of patterns, and there's a lot of resources that you can get online to make cloth diapers. And so if you have the ability to sew, which is kind of a dying art, making cloth diapers and having the quote, the plastic pants and having the safety pins. Although if you make them yourself, they got the Velcro and they work really nice. Here's another one that women don't consider is menstrual pads. And so years ago, my wife was making tons and tons of menstrual pads and sending them with an organization that brought them to Africa. And so the point is having, menstrual pads that can be washed and reused. and they make them with, often with, natural materials, flannel or or cotton, and it's layered, and they use something called pull, P-U-L. Women that sew, you'll know what it is. It's kind of a plasticky type thing that's a water barrier or a moisture barrier. And so making those, one thing that's popular now with a lot of women, especially the younger ones, is the menstrual cups. And so investing in, menstrual cups that a menstruating, girl or woman can use, and that is another way to keep hygiene and sanitation, where it should be.
They also have something called period panties. I don't know if you've heard of those, but they're these panties that the rewashable pads, they're just sewn in it. So after it's used, you toss the whole thing in the washer. And I didn't even know those existed until my girls a few years ago.
And even with the menstrual, the disposable ones that I mentioned, you need to have panties to hold things in place. And so you got to kind of have the right underwear to keep everything, where you want it as well. Yeah, you need to have, soaps and deodorants and things. And what we found is a lot of the stuff that you buy on at the store or in the marketplace is toxic. And so, we've started making our own dishwasher soap, and we find that these little pods that you buy, that they cost, we price them from 33 cents to 46 cents a pod. And they're lined in plastic, and they're so convenient. You just put them in the dishwasher and let them do their thing. They leave a thin film of plastic on all your dishes. And so it's like, ooh, we don't like plastic on our dishes. We're trying to stay away from that. As plastic, as many know, plastic is hormone disruptors. It creates lots of health problems. It will kill the microbiome in your gut. And so we make a laundry detergent as well as dishwasher detergent using, washing soda and, natural ingredients. And they work great. And again, our laundry detergent, and you can attach a handout for this if you're interested, Kylene, is 3 cents a load. So instead of paying 45 cents for one of these little pods, it's costing us 3 cents to do the dishwasher.
One of the interesting things that we did not very long ago is we got what is that generator? It's a
Ozone
generator for our washing machine. And the first time we used it, like some of my clothes, I had to wash 4 and 5 times to finish getting all the residual soap out of it. I didn't realize how much residual soap was in it. And so now we're just washing our clothes with ozone, and sometimes we'll put in a little bit of baking soda, but that's it. And our clothes are so much cleaner. It's interesting.
Yeah, and so again, part of sanitation is getting healthy, staying away from things that may make you sick or tired or gassy or bloated or constipated or diarrhea, whatever it is. We want to keep track of everything. We want to make sure that everybody is healthy. If somebody is sick, how are you going to protect everyone else from that? And so that's part of this sanitation process. Again, in Haiti, with standing water and human contamination in that water, that resulted in great sickness. The Mormon pioneers coming across the plains, it was cholera, dysentery, that was the result of so many of the deaths. And with what we know, with some of the natural things that could have been done, lives could have been saved. And so again, sanitation, we've got to save people's lives.
Some very good points. What have we missed on sanitation?
Here's another thing: a burn barrel. Are you in a location where you can take care of your trash? Now, many things that will burn can be composted, and we don't advocate burning plastic because that's a toxic mess all of itself. But in times past, people had burn barrels, and so is that something to consider? Hand washing. We know that soap is a better thing to use on your hands than hand sanitizer. And so we're seeing a lot of problems with hand sanitizer becoming too sanitary. We know from an allergy standpoint that the more you're exposed to a wide variety of things, the healthier you're going to be. And so the kids that are running around barefooted through the pasture and throwing manure at each other are going to be healthier than the ones, whose mom is the Lysol queen.
Mhm.
And so the point is, we need to keep our hands clean, to not spread disease. But soap is really what we want to use, whether it's a good bar soap or it's a Castile soap. How long will a bar of soap last if you've got a tote with many bars of soap? A long time.
Long time.
You can use soap that was made 20 years ago and it's going to be just fine. And so soap again is going to be better than hand sanitizer. But when you come to healthcare issues, maybe you need that strict, severe, antibacterial sanitation. And so again, using the right thing at the right time for the right purpose.
Okay, do we have any parting words on sanitation?
Be aware, be conscious of it. Don't neglect it. Don't neglect it. If somebody is not doing their job in the sanitation department, pitch in and do it. Because rather than standing your ground and say, it's not my turn, it's a matter of saying, no, I care enough about the individuals that are under my stewardship that I'm gonna do what's needed.
Excellent. And that was the Humanure handbook is actually a really good resource. So we would totally recommend to anybody. That's a great prepper book to have in your library. Thank you again, Dr. Christensen. This has been great. This was, so this is the end of sanitation. And then we are going to move on to our final episode. And that one's where we're going to tackle security, health, and harmony. So we'll want you to join us for that. But in the meantime, for the question of the day, what is your biggest challenge when it comes to sanitation if you have a whole lot of people coming for dinner? Comment below. And thanks for being part of the solution.